All right, good morning, everybody. Let's see. We have audio. Looks like we have audio. I think that we generally have all of the little issues from yesterday fixed. I know none of you probably got a notification that we were going live. That's the algorithm for you. But here we go. We're going to talk about some veterans issues and things of that sort this morning. Let's do this. All right, and good morning. Okay, so did a couple of things. Moved the new monitors around. Everything's working correctly now, apparently. Still changes the location of the camera because the new monitor is, well, it's kind of ridiculous actually, but fucking amazing. Anyway, so got all that going. Looks like sound is working. The show is back in order. Had a great day yesterday. And that's kind of what I want to talk about this morning. So yesterday I went and conducted interviews all day. I met the boys over there at 10 o'clock, and I left the location at about 1700. And 45 minutes of setting up cameras and lights, and about 30 minutes of tearing them down and packing them up aside. We spent that entire time with two very interesting veterans, and like, guys, I did some special stuff and had some pretty amazing encounters and a pretty active deployment. And while my military career, due to a few different issues, was not a full 20 year, I only did 7 years. But I did spend time in combat. But the two guys that I talked to yesterday, they're Iraq veterans. I did my war fight in Afghanistan. These guys are both 11 bang bangs that were, deep in some heavy fighting, and they have horror stories that would just blow your minds. But most of what I was talking to these guys about, they have started an organization, and you're going to hear me talk about this organization a lot in the future. I'm not going to name the organization today just because of where we are in the production of their documentary. But once the documentary we're working on is ready for prime time, you'll hear me talk about them. Before that, you'll hear me talk about them and by name a lot, and I'll be promoting their events and their organization on this show of a very great deal. I learned a lot yesterday. I learned a whole lot yesterday, and it hasn't changed my resolve, my interest in the issue, or my dedication to trying to offer assistance where I can and get involved where I can. For example, this documentary, this first piece of the documentary, at a minimum, I'm donating everything involved with it. I'm giving my time and my labor to the organization, and the idea is that the end product will be something that we can take and show to people, that we can go and approach places like the American Legion, the VFW, organizations like that, and have events. It's like, hey, it's a Friday night. We've got a 20-minute documentary about homeless veterans in the organization. Come watch the show. Make a donation at the door, maybe sell some raffle tickets, something like that, and proceeds go to the homeless veterans. But the things that I learned, the one that was a real eye-opener for me, was this idea of the category of homeless people. So for just a moment, I'm not talking about veterans for this. This applies to homeless in general, and also to homeless veterans. There are two primary categories that are discussed within the circles that service homelessness generally, and that's the chronically homeless and the newly homeless. And the chronically homeless are what most of you probably think about, what probably first comes to mind when you hear someone referred to as homeless, when you hear somebody talk about people being homeless. You think about somebody who's dirty and ragged and pushing a shopping cart, living under a bridge somewhere in a cardboard box in an alley, things like that. And to be sure, there are those cases, the chronically homeless. And the fact of the matter is that for the chronically homeless, there is some significant factor. Sergeant Major mentions mental illness and substance abuse. For the chronically homeless, that's absolutely a major factor. But I was told stories yesterday about what are referred to as the newly homeless. And these are people who are technically homeless, and they're in a situation where that technically homeless can rapidly become inescapably chronically homeless. One story involved, and I won't get into a lot of detail for, these are private stories. I'll keep them all as anonymous as I can. And to be perfectly frank, for the purposes of the documentary, the guys telling me the stories were telling me the stories as anonymously as possible anyway. So I don't know any names or any identifying details like that. I just know parts of the stories enough to have a discussion about the issues and to produce the documentary. One example they mentioned was a couple with a couple of kids, married couple. They've got a few kids, and not unlike my wife and myself, both veterans. These two are both 100% disabled veterans. For those of you that are not veterans and never had any interaction with the Veterans Affairs VA system, to say somebody is 100% disabled, for anybody who hadn't dealt with that system, that probably sounds a lot like they had their lower half blown off and they're basically bolted to a wheelchair for the rest of their life. Not quite. It has to do that rating, at least ostensibly, has to do with the difference between what you in your career path should be earning and what you're capable of earning because of the injuries and damages sustained during your military service. And theoretically, the disability that you get, it's referred to as disability compensation, as in you're being compensated for the difference between your expected normal earning potential and your actual earning potential as a result of your injuries. It's an adversarially complex system. The government has set up the VA system and the disability compensation system because it's part of the contract that you sign when you enlist in the military. They'll take care of you. Basically, if they break you, they bought you. And the system is set up to be very complex and adversarial precisely because the government despises giving money to people who deserve it. They would much rather you be an entirely useless Democrat and pay for your entire cost of living than dole out $1,000 a month to try and help you buy groceries when it's difficult to stand for more than a few hours at a time. But back to the newly homeless, this couple, they're both at the 100% rating, couple kids. They both got jobs. They're in a position where and they have a house at the beginning of the story. They're in a position where they can handle their problems. They're paying their bills. They're not even struggling to pay the bills. And then all of a sudden, there was some pickle that arose with the landlord, and a house that was falling apart. Right, they were in the process of trying to find a new home. The house is falling apart. Something goes on with the landlord. Landlord sells the house out from under him. And now what you've got is a couple who's got the money to move into a new place, but there's no new place to move into. And they don't have a place to be until they move into that new place. So you got mommy and daddy and a couple of kids living in the car, because even if all the chips fall exactly right and everything moves along as fast as it can, from the time that the house they're in is just cut out from under them to the time they can move into a new place, even if they already started doing paperwork on the same day, might be 3 weeks or a month. Right? Now that is admittedly a somewhat extreme and hopefully uncommon occurrence, but it is an occurrence. And see, you find yourself in that position. Now all of a sudden, were you budgeting toward being prepared to get the new place? Buying groceries in bulk, saving money, that way, doing the right thing, and then all of a sudden, oh shit, I'm living in the car, and it's not like I've got a hot plate or somewhere to plug in a Foreman grill or somewhere to store a large quantity of economically viable food. No, all of a sudden you're eating fast food. You're feeding the kids McDonald's 2 or 3 times a day because needs must. So that's the category of homeless veterans in particular that the organization that I was talking to yesterday is dealing with. And what they do, and again, we'll go into much more detail on the particulars of this. What they do, in fact, is they they have some deals with a few different hotels that will offer very, very competitive rates. I don't I won't get into exact numbers on that. That's none of your or my business for this conversation. But they've got some hotels that are very accommodating that will take in the homeless veterans. And I mean, you still have to pay for the room, right? And the organization pays for the room or pays for them to get in there, and then the veteran is responsible for paying for part of it. And there are a lot of caveats there, but they're real good at, hey, you need a hand up to get in. Let's get you in. So the organization either puts them in there, or they've got a few. They have some apartments that they are leasing the apartments. They put the service members in the, or I'm sorry, not service members, the veterans in those apartments, as a short-term program while they get them into a more permanent situation, whether that's renting or purchasing a home that they can actually move into and live in. The story of these guys, they started off this. They're both veterans. They're both disabled veterans, and when they first started this program, it wasn't even really a program at first. They strapped on rucksacks and they went and spent 100 nights visiting with and delivering needs for homeless people in downtown Atlanta. There's a, y'all, for real, this documentary is going to be amazing. The stories these guys have are outrageously interesting. And part of what they talked about learning is they went and met the homeless in Atlanta, and they learned things like this was not entirely a surprise to me. It's something that I've actually talked about before, but the homeless in Atlanta aren't hungry. They don't need food, right? And don't get me wrong. I'm sure that there are exceptions to that statement, but in Atlanta, it's illegal for a restaurant to just give food away. I am kind of two minds on that. I dislike laws generally which prevent a person from being able to do anything freely that doesn't constitute harm. And I find it very difficult to imagine that my freely giving away my own property to another person for any reason at all can cause harm in which the state has a compelling interest. But restaurants will try and put food into clean trash bags and set those out at, as indirectly as possible, actually put the food where people can get at it. And then, of course, there are food pantries, there are soup kitchens. In this country, broadly, if you're hungry, there is somebody who will feed you. And this is not somebody that you have to search for, right? They advertise. They stand out where you can see them. They're there. And of course, the other thing is, so they go down there, they do their 100 nights, and I cannot tell the story as well as the men who actually experienced it, and that's why we're producing a documentary for one. The story that really, it's not so much that it touched me, it did, but kind of surprised me. They said one of the biggest things they did that the homeless downtown appreciated more than anything was they showed up one night when it was raining, and before they went out that night, they went and bought ponchos from the dollar store and Walmart. They just went and bought a shitload of ponchos, like 100 and some ponchos, and went and gave those out. And I mean, that, can you imagine? You're stuck outside and it starts raining, right? Yeah, we see them live under the underpass, and that makes a lot of sense. That's a big chunk of shelter. You know, you need an option. There you go. Yeah, Stryker says new warm socks, ponchos, thermal blankets. Absolutely. But you know, one of the things they talked about was clothes. Like, you know, you want to give the homeless guy some clean clothes, some fresh clothes, right? Well, what's he going to do with them? I mean, he can change into the fresh clothes. Is he going to tote the old ones around with him? You know, stuff like that is something that he has to carry. Now, a poncho, that keeps the rain off. And let me tell you something. For your average homeless guy, a poncho is a thing you can wear, right? And it'll keep the rain off. I know I've got more than a couple of veterans in here in my thread this morning who know a poncho can be your base of operations. A good poncho, that's a roof over equipment. That is no shit shelter. You barely even need anything that you can tie it up with. You know, a big enough poncho, you can just tie the ends to things or hook them over a tree. A poncho is shelter. Even if all you've got is some sticks and rocks to make a lean-to, an A-frame. So those are a big deal. I'm for the next probably several weeks, I'm going to be spending a hell of a lot of time because I filmed these guys for. I mean, we took smoke breaks and stood around and shot the shit between shoots throughout the day, but I filmed them on 4 cameras for probably a total of 5 hours of solid recording. So I'm going to be digging through somewhere between 16 and 20 hours of footage to produce what will likely be about a 20-minute, maybe 30-minute documentary. Verified Bear says a bivvy is basically a long poncho. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that, with the word bivvy. I wonder if you're referring to. Oh, okay, yeah. Gotcha. I'm sorry, Bear. I'm a U.S. soldier. We use whole words and acronyms, nothing in between. we're not great on the adorable abbreviations. We have breakfast, not breaky. So, cheers, mate. So, and I'll be honest, one of the reasons that I'm talking about this in particular this morning and not flashed a bunch of articles is I have already just absolutely lost my taste for all of the Middle East combat war blather, and arguments over who's worse, the Jews or the Islamists. It makes me want to ask everybody the very simple question, guys. It's possible for everybody to be wrong. They could all be wrong. So I want to close on this. This is an old article that I just happened to come across while I was looking for, and you see that I stole the picture right from there and then did enough change to it to meet copyright standards by making significant alterations for the purposes of education and demonstration. Fair use, bitches. But I grabbed that shot because I'm not just talking about veterans this morning. I'm not just talking about the fact that there are homeless veterans, but part of what I'm talking about and part of what I'm digging into with this project for the documentary is getting myself and hopefully many of you more involved in this particular okay. Sergeant Major just broke me with that one. Dad says, at Bear, Chris found bear scat in our yard. Are you still in England? Oh, I did, in fact, find bear scat in the yard. Dad found bear scat on the dam by the pond out on the farm, and we were over there Sunday, and I found more bear scat in the driveway right in front of the house. So it's not by the size of the turd, it's not an especially large bear, but I will tell you this. There are bears that are not grizzly bears, but a bear is a fucking bear. So we're keeping a good eye out on that. Keeping a close eye out on that. But hey, so far, none of the chickens, ducks, or guinea fowl have disappeared, so I think we're trending in the right direction. This image, this is not a homeless veteran. This is a veteran, a member of the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, at Post 23 of Lebanon, Pennsylvania. And this is their 4th annual Homeless Veterans Awareness Campaign in Lebanon. This is from 2013. I went searching, and there's not, I couldn't find any information on this particular program ongoing. And in the time that I had from the time I found this to the time I had to go live, I did not find anything else referencing specific times or dates on events of this sort. I am going to be looking for that information after I get back from shooting real estate today. And that is going to have to become a part of this documentary series and a part of the dissemination of information that comes from this channel. I'm going to be looking for events like this. And I say that to say, guys, I need a favor from y'all. If you know about stuff like this, homeless veterans awareness campaigns, veterans focused charity groups that are not the big ones that everybody knows about, right? Everybody knows about Wounded Warrior, right? For example. But there are a bunch of smaller groups out there that they need donations, they need volunteers, but even more, they need collaboration, right? You may have a homeless veteran soup kitchen that has no capacity at all to help a homeless veteran move through a program that finds them in a job and a house. And we can connect those groups. And they can increase the number of people that they can help. And maybe more importantly, you may know somebody with deep pockets that wants to make a large donation to a program of this sort. That is something else that we need to connect people with. Believe it or not, there are people out there with money that want to help people and don't know who to help. Have them call me. I can tell them who to help. I can help them help me help somebody else. And in full disclosure, I'm donating the first episode of what is intended to be a docu-series, in part on the expectation that the docu-series will be used to solicit funding to reach out, raise awareness, and garner attention for the purpose of raising money, right? I'm not making a documentary for homeless veterans. I'm making a documentary about homeless veterans for the people who can afford to help them, so that we can help let them know this is where your help is needed, and we would kindly appreciate it. So all that said, you can always send material like that for friends on Facebook. You can always find me on Facebook or the Brushfire Mind on Facebook. Or you can send emails to the show at brushfiremind.com, and we'll see those. So if you find stuff like this Veterans Awareness Campaign in Lebanon, preferably you find stuff like this that's in Georgia, because I can only drive so far in a day. And I can go out there and do man-on-the-street interviews, shoot B-roll for the documentaries, and make some relationships, build some connections like that. I would absolutely appreciate the hell out of that. Pit Danny says perhaps you can monetize YouTube or Rumble. We are monetized on Rumble. YouTube doesn't want us. We've played that game. We were monetized on YouTube several years ago, and then they purged us with the rest of the ne'er-do-wells and wrong thinkers during the first great adpocalypse. But that said, if you want to contribute to help me absorb the costs of donating my time and work for this, you can always buy me a coffee. I'll go ahead and pop you the link right there. You can always use the Buy Me a Coffee link to send funding just to help with the cost of doing work like that. For example, yesterday I went and I set up about $35,000 worth of camera equipment and lights that had to be transported, had to be assembled, and had to be operated with a, let's be frank, we're talking about high-end cinema cameras. A high degree of expertise is required to just make the things take a picture. And to get a good picture out of them is a whole nother adventure, which, I had to go to college for that. Well, I didn't have to, but I did. So, you can always buy me a coffee, and that helps enormously. And as soon as the documentary is ready for prime time, I expect there will be some level of distribution through the Brushfire Mind channel, but that will only happen after distribution is completely satisfied through the organization itself. Which again, I'll start referring to them by name in the days and weeks to come. Probably be a week and a half to 2 weeks before I actually say the name of the group out loud on the show. But I know many of you in the chat already know who I'm talking about, because there are a lot of you that I see socially with frequency, or just related to. Hi, Mom. So I am going to go ahead and put a button in it there. I got to go out to Fairburn and fly my bird. Hopefully it stops raining. And we love you, and we will see you tomorrow for Firearms Friday. Be safe, guys. Take care.